This is John from Chicago area. I ride my bike over 8,000 miles per year. This video is on my gravel trail trip from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. It's called the Greater Allegheny Passage Gap, and the other half is the C&O Canal Trail. To get to Pittsburgh, I took the Amtrak from Chicago. And to get to Chicago, I rode my bike from my house in the far north suburbs to Union Station. I loaded my bike up on the baggage car and then went to the coach section where the train left at 6:40 in the evening and arrived in Pittsburgh at 5:05. I slept on the train. In the train station, I met a father, son, and a neighbor. It was an hour later at 6, so I decided to get going, and that other three people, they got going about a half hour after me. I headed down to the river and rode along the river to the point. And the point is a connection of the three rivers, the Allegheny, the Monongahela, which is the Mong, and they make the Ohio River. It was still quite dark out, as you could see. I wasn't sure. I really wanted to stop someplace to get something to eat, but there was no restaurants open at 6 o'clock in the morning that I could see. And I chose to get going because there was rain scheduled to come in about 2, 3 hours, and I wanted to get a pretty good start on it. So I rode in the dark along the Mong River to the hot metal bridge where I crossed over. Riding in the dark did have its benefits. All the bridges were lit up with LED lights, and the side of the hill had a lot of lights on some of the buildings. And I continued riding, and I started to look for breakfast in Homestead, but it was before 7, and the restaurant that I saw was closed, so I kept on riding. McKinneyport, I also thought that'd be a spot I could find a breakfast, but the restaurants in town were not on the trail. So I kept riding to Boston. And at Boston, I saw a sign up saying that there were restaurants on the bar that was open. And I went into the bar, and it turned out that there was two people drinking beers in the morning, but the bar only had breakfasts on Friday through Monday, and it was Tuesday, so they didn't have any breakfasts. They said I could probably get a breakfast in the next town, and I ended up buying a Gatorade and headed back on the bike to go to the next town. The paved path turned to a gravel path a few miles back. I guess the first 21 miles were paved, and then the rest, all the way up to Washington, D.C., is gravel. And we came up to a waterfall here. The water was turning the rocks to red, and that's acid mine waste in the water. And the water is high in iron content. It oxidizes the water and turns it red. The next town was West Newton, and I was successful in finding something to eat. Although the first three spots, or two pizza places or a restaurant and two pizza places, were closed, ended up going across the river to the subway in town and having my late breakfast or early lunch. It was a neat bicycle shop in town here. If I had time, I'd probably have gone in and just walked around. They have some older BMX bikes and things like that. It started to clear up and be a nicer day, which was great. There are some little Adirondack cabins and camp spots along the way, which are free. If it was during the summer, I would definitely take advantage of that. I was staying tonight, first night I'm staying in Connellsville at a motel that I booked. It was Comfort Inn, and it's right on the trail. Today's date is October 15th, and the leaves are starting to change. It's quite pretty. I think ideally it would have been nice to go maybe a week later, but this has been a late fall for leaf changing. I got to Connellsville at just a little bit after 1. The other three people, the father, son, and the neighbor, got there at about 5. They were just drenched when they got in. I guess it rained between 1 and 5 pretty good. I did clean off my bike and I went into town, got something to eat at, I think it was Trailside. The next morning, I had a nice breakfast at Comfort Inn, and I got an early start, just a little bit after 7. There was still a prediction for rain later in the day, but I started writing, and this seems to be, I'm told, the most scenic area from Collinsville to Cumberland. I decided originally I was going to do the ride in 6 days, but I met up with two guys by that red waterfall, and they said they were doing it in 5 days, and they were going to Ohio Pile today or last night, which would be the next town I'm coming up to, and then to Cumberland, and then 3 days on the um, C&O Trail. I'm coming up to the Great Gorge. It is very pretty out. I think the leaves are changing more and more as I go up in elevation, but there's a gorgeous view of the river here. We are at mile 16 and a half, the Yokohama River, going on this big bridge. Gorgeous views. Let's see here. I kayaked down this river a couple times. I don't know how far I went. I made it this far or not. Probably. I know I didn't go over the big falls. Yeah, it's pretty. I'm coming up to the second bridge, which is the Low Bridge in Ohio Pile. The state park here is fantastic. If you wanted to spend an extra day or two, this would be a good spot to stay along the trip, would be Ohio Pile. And I could have, instead of stopping at Collinsville, I got there at 1. I could have kept on going and got to Ohio Pile probably at around 3 or so in the afternoon, and even 4, it would be early enough. If I had to do it again, I would probably have gone to Ohio Pile for the first night. The leaves here are just beautiful. It's Yokohama River is off to the left here. You're following it. There's a lot of rapids. As I said, I've been here twice before just to go kayaking with the Chicago Whitewater Association in the river there. Next time I would do this, I'd probably, like I said, stop in Ohio Pile at one of the hotels downtown, or if it was during the summer, at the state campground. Now I'm coming up to the Pinkerton High Bridge, and I saw two girls on there. Pretty neat.
Very neat. Yeah, and I love the rock.
Oh, yeah. Mile 52. Starting to drizzle harder. The Pinkerton Low Bridge. And it's just gorgeous out. The leaf color and everything. Just a nice fall day. This orange building is a gas station, a convenience store, a bar, and a motel. The two guys that I saw earlier ended up spending the night there. It was raining a little bit, so I got out of the rain, and then I had 2 hamburgers there, which were delicious. This is the Salisbury Viaduct. Nice view of the river below and the road. It's just getting gorgeous out with all the fall colors. I'm coming up to Myersville here, Myersdale. This is a railroad station that they made into a museum. They had some trains set up in there, and I also had an ice cream sandwich I bought there and had. Then I was off to the Great Divide, or the Continental Divide. This is the Continental Divide, and they have a mirror in there. You're going up at about a 1%, you go back down at a 2%. So I have about 22 miles into Cumberland, and it's all downhill, which is really nice. After crossing the Eastern Divide in the Big Savage Tunnel, you come to a row of benches with a gorgeous view looking over the valley that you're going to be riding through over the next hour. We're at the Mason-Dixon line. That's the line between Pennsylvania and Maryland. I had my bike sitting right on the line there, half in each state. The next tunnel is the Borden Tunnel, which you go through. It's paved, and then you ride a little bit further to your last town before Cumberland, which is Frostburg. At Frostburg, there's a railroad station, or there's a train tracks that go up from Cumberland, and there's a steam train. I was too late for the steam train, but there were some people on cars, little railroad cars that you bicycled down, and it was fun to watch them go. It looked like a fun thing to try. The last tunnel before Cumberland is the Brush Tunnel. Went through that, and then there's some gorgeous views of the valley again. These views are just to die for, with the leaves changing colors. I got into Cumberland before dark and got a motel. I wish I would have stayed at the motel right on the trail instead of one in town there, about 4 or 5 blocks from the trail. The second half of the ride is on the C&O toll path. It's 185 miles plus 7 miles from mile 0 across the mall to the Union Station. It's a marvelous ride. It's a completely different trail than feel to it than what the Gap Trail is. They do a nice job in town. In fact, I wish I would have stayed at the Fairfield Inn. I stayed at the Ramada instead. There was a number of bikers that were staying at the Ramada, so it wasn't bad, but it'd be nice to be right on the trail itself. Next time I would see if I could make that happen. And there definitely will be a next time, because this is a fantastic trail. Many people rank this as the #1 trail in the United States, and I can see why. It has a big history behind it. It's well maintained. When you put the two trails together, it's a long distance. The sights, nature, everything about it. You could stay in motels, you could camp. They have free camping, so it's a fantastic trail. Here you see what the trail looks like. It's a lot different than what the Gap is. You can see the grass in the middle there. That's pretty common, and there's not as much stone or gravel put down, and it's not manicured as good. It's definitely not champagne gravel. Here's one of the locks. This is, you'll see many locks along this. Every few miles there's a lock. I think there's over 70 locks in total, and some of them have the home. You can see the campground there. We just passed one. Every about 5 miles there's a campground. They have a porta potty, a pump, picnic tables, and fire pits. And I chose camping for this half of the ride because of the flexibility it gives you on distance, because every 5 miles there's a campsite. Here's another lock house. At each lock it drops about 8 feet or so, and then it's just flat. So this is, you're not going up and down, it's just flat, except for at each lock there's a slight drop or rise. The part of this is cut through some canyons. You can see the cliff on the right and on the left. Some of it's a lot wider, but it's basically the same cross section throughout the whole, almost the whole trip here on the CNO. There's the water on the left as we're going toward Washington, D.C. You have the mule trail that they pull the barges on, and then you have the Potomac on the right. But the fall, it's a gorgeous time. You can see the color in the leaves. I went mid-October, and the leaves were fairly well along or just beginning. It would have been nice to have maybe a week later, but this was a late fall. The trip is just gorgeous. Here we're coming to the Paw Paw Tunnel. This is one of your longer tunnels. This particular one you can't ride through because it's fairly narrow, the walkway, and it's quite rough. But so it gives you a little bit of a relief for doing this long walk through the tunnel. See the bricks that are laid in it, and then after you come out of the tunnel, you can see the gorge they cut to make the towpath. So it's again just fantastic scenery, and you won't see anything like this. A lot of people, I think, might prefer the CNO towpath over the gap. And people that like the gap like it because there's places to stop every 15, 20 miles. There's a town for meals and hotels, so it gives you a little bit more stopping, where this is a little bit more rural. Again, another lock we were passing there, and you can see the Potomac on the right. Some places there's rapids on it. Some places it's they call slack water, where they took out the actual towpath and moved it over to the Potomac because of the cliffs. This is the first one of the aqueducts we're going by. It's going over a creek, so what they had to do is put a culvert underneath this aqueduct to take the stream over to the Potomac, and the boats would float through here. This is how they handled stream crossings for the towpath. Another outhouse, and this is a campsite. It has a table down there, and I think the pump, and there'll be a sign that tells you how far the next one is and how far back, or the campsites are in both directions. This particular one is right at a lock. You can see the remains of the lock house here, the chimney. Then we popped up onto some paved trail. They had a detour that sent us over to this because the main path, they had one of the wood bridges were out, so they sent us onto the new paved trail that they got about 200-300 feet up the bank. We had to go back down right there, or I had to go back down because they were paving up ahead, but that was a nice little break. I think it's about a 10-mile section of asphalt, so you have the choice of staying on the gravel towpath or switching over to the asphalt, which was really fast. And we're coming up to their first town. This is where most people stop, is Hancock, up ahead about 4 or 5 miles here. And I wanted to go about 15 miles past Hancock so I could get into DC a little bit earlier. Here's some kilns that they made cement. This cement was used for a lot of the monuments in Washington, D.C. Coming up to Hancock here, there's a bike store. There's a sign for it. Again, everything is off trail. It's just off the trail. There's a fantastic bike shop. You could spend the night there in their little bunk area and take a shower. They referred me to a spot to get my grocery store and a restaurant in town. So I got my supplies and I kept on going. That was about 4:30 I got there, and I continued on. It was really nice riding in the evening till I arrived at my campsite here. My camp spot. It's about 15 miles past Hancock. It's called a hiker-biker camp spot. They have them about every 5 miles. You got a pump, you got a porta potty up there, you got a table, and I got a fire pit and a grill. Last night I woke up at 3 to pee, and I had a hard time getting back to sleep because I was cold. I figured I ran out of food because I ate at 4:30 that night before, so I ended up eating a pecan pie. It was 36 degrees. Today's ride is 67 miles, which is about 20 miles past Harper's Ferry. Right here, you're seeing some steep cliffs and some slack water on the right where they dam the Potomac River up downstream so they could use the Potomac as the towpath. These areas are really quite gorgeous. Every so often you'll run into them on today's ride. I came up to a detour here and they were doing some construction, and it was a nasty trip up those stairs. But I made it. Anyways, here's some fog in the morning. Quite pretty with the sunlight showing through the trees. I'm on my way to Williamsport, where I'm going to have breakfast. It's 10 miles from the campground. I did have a breakfast at the campground. I had some granola and some yogurt, but I wanted a real breakfast at a regular restaurant. So I'm coming into Williamsport right here. There is a jogger out. And whenever you get near a town, there's normally a few people on the path. But otherwise, it was pretty well empty till I got closer to Washington, D.C. I went up the ramp here into Williamsport. I had to ride a couple blocks to get to the downtown. I made a left on this upcoming street here. I went to the end of that street to a restaurant, and that restaurant was closed. So the restaurant that I passed on the left, it has an LED light in the window. I ended up eating breakfast there. It was quite good. I'm glad I got something to eat. That set me up for the rest of the day. Fairly good. That LED light you see in that window is where I ate breakfast. Here's a photo of the area inside the restaurant. I'm back on the trail after breakfast. I'm passing another hiker biker campground here. Like I said, they're about every 5 miles along the ride. And I'm coming up to another area here where it's called Slackwater, where they placed a dam up ahead a few miles, and they're using the Potomac, or they used the Potomac at the time for the C&O Canal towpath, where they floated the barges right on the Potomac instead of on a separate dug channel, because of the high cliffs here. But these areas are gorgeous that you passed. And some areas, there's some homes on the other side that are quite nice. Here's the dam that backed up the Potomac so it could be used as slackwater. I ended up eating a couple of the burritos I bought at the store yesterday for lunch. This was before Harper's Ferry. I was going to go into Harper's Ferry and cross the bridge and have lunch in town along with a beer. But anyways, I'm coming up to Harper's Ferry here. You could start to see some people coming up in a few minutes. It's one of the very busy areas along the route, because you have not only the bikers, but you also have the hikers doing the Appalachian Trail, the AT. We run together for about 4 miles. You see Potomac on the right there. But this is one of the locks just before Harper's Ferry. But anyways, the trail, the AT shares the towpath for about 3 miles when you get to Harper's Ferry. And Harper's Ferry is a really neat town. Next time I go, I will definitely go in. I ended up parking my bike at the bridge because you have to climb up the stairs to get into town. And to do that, my bike was too heavy. You need to carry the panniers up first and carry the bike. And I decided I'll just go up and take a photo. I was going to walk into town, but felt uneasy leaving my bike there with about 20 other bikes while I went into town. But this is a path you'd have to go. I zoomed in and some of the downtown area. Going the other way, here's the railroad tunnel leaving. So I got back on the bike after taking the photo from Harper's Ferry, And you'll see a few of the hikers coming along over the next couple miles here. And there's some good views of the Potomac. There's some rapids in here. I sat on a rock there and had a granola bar. There's a hiker coming that was hiking the AT. And then we come to one of the other aqueducts. The aqueducts are, I guess there's 11 of them. And it took 22 years to complete them all. And these are like Roman aqueducts underneath. There's arches that let the stream go through underneath these, and it's basically what they use to get across some of the stream crossings for the barges. And here's another lock house and lock. And as we get closer to Washington, D.C., I find we're getting more and more people. Here's a lock house coming up. This one you could rent. There's a porta potty there. You have to rent them ahead of time and arrange for that. Next time I'll probably do it. I ended up camping about 5 miles past this lock house. Today is day 5. It's my last day, and it's 20. I'm starting 20 miles past Harper's Ferry, and I'm going to Washington, D.C., Union Station. Today started off nice. The highlights for today are we're going to come up to Great Falls, which is a real busy spot. It's quite scenic, and also pass by Georgetown. We'll find mile 0, and we go across the mall to Union Station. Here's one of the lock houses. I'm doing a lot of shots on the locks and lock houses because I'm a civil engineer and I like everything related to water and how they did this. I think it's very cool for something they built this long ago. Passing one of the campsites there, there's the porta potty for it, and you have the trees that are shining in the sun, and you have the Potomac River on the right here. I found a shot of the Potomac River, and there's some skulls racing out there. That was pretty cool to hear their loudspeakers going and see the race or part of the race. Then I continued on, and one of the things that amazes me is the canal. I just wonder it's kept up in a better shape as you get closer to Washington, D.C. They trimmed all the trees on the edge of it, and they have water in it in most places, and many of the locks have been restored. I almost wondered if this could be used in the future to do trips up and down the canal system. I was thinking they could get about 10 canal boats on here and rent those out and go all the way from Washington, D.C. to Cumberland, stay in the lock homes. This was one that was open, and they have water going through the lock at this location. So I just wondered if that's a possibility and wouldn't be surprised if somebody tries that in the future. I don't know if they'd sleep on the lock boats or stay in the lock houses. But anyways, again, the water's a little bit wider, and they keep water in most of these. Now I'm coming up to Great Falls here. There's a lot more people. They come and park here, and they go see the falls and walk along the Potomac River. Here's one of the boats they had under a tarp, and there's Great Falls. As you can see, there's no way to navigate through it. There are people that kayak down it. It's fun to watch them kayak. Again, there's just a lot of people walking along the trails at Great Falls. I think they charge about $20. They come in and park. There were some bike packers going by. Again, it's just a gorgeous day out. The weather, the last half was great. Last 4 days or 3 days. Be sunny every day, and it would warm up into the 60s. It'd be chilly at night. It would be down in the mid 30s to start the day, but it turned really nice every day. Some of the highlights, I think, on the trip. This is a fantastic trip. The Gap, you're starting in Pittsburgh. They have a great area along the riverfront, and there's a lot of labor history going on there. There's a lot of history throughout this whole ride. You're coming up to some revolutionary or Civil War sites, battlefields, and things like that. I'm going by a race right now. They're doing a running race, a marathon, and that was one of the aid stations. But it's just so many things going on. You could stay in motels, bed and breakfasts. You could camp. There's free camping and paid camping. Now I'm coming up to Washington, D.C. Here's Georgetown. And I start to look for mile zero here. It's you got to get off the main trail a little bit and come over to the river, and there's a boat yard here, and you go around the back of the boat yard and you could find mile zero. So I was able to find it. Many people have a difficult time finding it. So it's right over there on the right on the other side of that creek. I just have to cross the bridge, and I found mile zero. From here, I have 7 or 8 miles to the through the mall, which is a fantastic trip or way to view the mall is on bike. It's you can't get much better than that. So I work my way over along the riverfront, and then I turn and start to go toward the mall. The mall was really nice to see. It's just fantastic area. Everybody should get a chance to either walk it or bike it. The Lincoln and Memorial, and there's the Washington Monument that I was headed toward. One of my big concerns on this trip was whether I could get a train at Union Station to go back to Chicago and get my bike back. When I checked ahead of time, they didn't have a spot for my bike, but what you could do is if they don't have a spot, you could buy a bike box from them for $25, and they'll put the bike on the train and you could go. I just wasn't sure if this was going to work, so I wanted to get there 2 hours ahead of time before the train left instead of just the hour that they recommended. And when I got there, I found that, like I knew, they didn't have any spots to just walk up and put your bike on the train. You had to box it. And it turned out they ran out of boxes several days before, and the new boxes haven't came in. So they told me I had to scurry and find a box somewhere. I got at least I had gotten in 2 hours beforehand, and I had about an hour to get a box, which I did. I found that REI 2 miles away had boxes. They'd sell me for $20. I got a cab. I paid the cabbie extra to wait for me at REI and gave him another $20 tip at the end, and was able to get a bike box so I could make the trip back. It took me about 10, 15 minutes to take the pedals off the bike, turn the handlebars, and get everything boxed up and taped up. But I was able to get out of Union Station back to Chicago. The train left at 4 and got into Chicago a little bit after 9. I wish Amtrak would have more spots on trains for bicycles in these high bicycle areas. I tried quite a bit, but here I am back in Chicago, and I'm riding from the train station back to my house. I'm riding along Lakeshore Drive here. That's the John Hancock Building, and on the left there, and it's just a gorgeous ride back to my house. I really think I'll try using Amtrak a little bit more often, ride to the station, which is 45 miles, and then get on the train and not even bother with the car at all. It's a nice way to travel. I just wish they had a few more spots for bikes on these high areas. I tried 3, 4 different dates, and they did not have any spaces. So, but otherwise, Amtrak is good if you don't mind sleeping in a seat overnight. If you get a room, it's quite a bit more. It's like 5 times as much, but sleep in the seat, it's comparable to an airline ticket or a little less than an airline ticket. So thanks for watching. This is John Moore. If you have any comments or questions, please leave those in the comment section